MysteryWire.com, home of the unusual and unknown. From Area 51 to the paranormal, it's your source to the most vetted UFO stories and special investigations in the world. Take a journey into the universe of MysteryWire.com.
Well, Jeremy, here we are again. And we got something good today, right?
We do.
Let me set the stage a little bit for those who haven't been following this closely. In July 2019, there was a series of strange intrusions involving multiple U.S. Navy warships off the coast of Southern California. At least 5 of these ships that we know of, possibly more, were at times surrounded by unknown objects over a period of days. And the objects are truly of unknown origin. If they're foreign drones, they displayed abilities that exceed our own technology, anything we know of, that is, and that some of them appeared to be transmedium craft. They could fly in the air, they could enter the ocean, travel through water as easily as they travel through the air. We don't have drones like that. Ship's logs show that the Navy was genuinely perplexed. Much of the information collected over several days was sent forward to the Pentagon, and we know some of that information made its way into a briefing document prepared by the UAP task force. That document is classified, but the images in the document are not, because the task force has shown those images to multiple different audiences, including intelligence agencies, higher ups in the military, the Joint Chiefs, and to some defense contractors. They wanted to educate those audiences that this is a legitimate mystery, that these are genuine unknowns. One of the images used by the UAP task force in its briefings showed a still of a spherical object that flew alongside the USS Omaha for a period of time and then reportedly vanished into the ocean, disappeared from all the sensors on the ship. You made that public. We helped put it out a couple of weeks ago. Then a few weeks ago as well, you and Mystery Wire released video footage recorded off of a screen inside the USS Omaha. The image on the screen was detected by a thermal imaging system taken of an object floating along in the dead of night along with the ship. The image itself is a little bit grainy, but the Pentagon confirmed this is real footage recorded by Navy personnel, and we have further confirmed it's part of the UAP task force presentation and is still listed as genuinely unidentified. All kinds of experts on Twitter, Jeremy, you haven't paid a lot of attention on social media for a while, but all kinds of experts, you know, that's where the real expertise always resides, is on Twitter. They've decided the Navy doesn't know what it's talking about because the objects are such and such, no big deal. What they do acknowledge is that the Navy and the task force have more information than they do, and more information than you and I do. They've decided that the Navy doesn't know what it's talking about, even though the Navy and the task force have sensor data, way more than just the thermal images. And the same is true for the Tic Tac cases, the gimbal, the other well-known UFO incidents. They have the goods, and they still consider these to be unidentified. So today, for the first time, you have some sensor data. Jeremy, what do you got?
Well, I just want to start by saying, I don't know that the Pentagon or the UAPTF had more data than us. This is something we might want to talk about, something that I've recently learned. But here's the deal. I have not been paying attention to social media. I know that people think they're experts. They say the footage is grainy, as you said, but actually it's not grainy. That's what thermal looks like. That's what FLIR looks like. That shows us a lot more data. If you took a normal camera from the deck of the Omaha, you'd see inky blackness with lights. So we actually get to see the shape of the object with no control surfaces, no tail, no wings, no rotors, no plumes of exhaust. You know, that's pretty much the true shape of the object we're seeing. And I've talked to numerous FLIR experts since then. So we're actually seeing some really incredible footage. However, and rightfully so, I'd say, the public has been belly aching about there not being corroborative data. Oh, it must be first faked, the footage I put out, then it must be a balloon that goes into the water. Well, hold on. We're talking about swarms of unidentifieds that were circling multiple warships. And I'll tell you now, there were nine warships out there that experienced the same things, similar things. So here's the deal. What we are releasing today, and George, we've vetted this, we've looked through this, I mean, to the top degree. You will hear the same voices. This is from the CIC, the Combat Information Center. And we could talk about that and what that means too. This is corroborative electro-optic data. And this is significant because it shows and it supports the idea that there were a multitude of unknowns swarming our warships. So this is a radar. Now, how do you give radar data to the public? Do you give a printout? How do you do it? Well, luckily, we have footage from the CIC that was obtained by a crew that was specifically called in to film these anomalous events, a very special visual intelligence crew that came in and filmed the screen of the radar. So that's how we're going to deliver it to the public. You see what's S and X band radar, which is a really interesting tolerance of C to a certain altitude. And that's where these targets were really locked, these unidentified. There's also in the footage, there's a civilian vessel. So you can kind of see the difference. And then as I push through the footage, I provided 4 separate clips in the one clip that I'm dropping. You can hear the responses. And most importantly, you can see towards the end, there's 9 unidentifieds just circling, swarming. So there were 14 at the beginning. I'm not providing that footage, but there were 14. But this is corroborative electro-optic data that the likes of which the world has never seen before. And it supports the hypothesis that these are not just a balloon dropping into the water, or it's not something that is easily explained. These are true unidentifieds in mass number. And we'll talk more about that, but that's what we're showing people for the first time in history, where you have radar data that goes with FLIR data, what everybody has been belly aching for. So here you go, but it's going to take a little bit of thought to understand what you're seeing. There's a learning curve. That's on you, the viewer.
So we'll play the video and then we'll talk about it on the other side.
OD, if you can write a general lat long where we're at, and then the number of contacts you got, get the course and speed meters off them. You know what I mean? And relative position to us, like bearings, might be helpful too. Eyes up.
Eyes down.
System 2, maintain track as best you can.
Track 781 just sped up to 46 knots, 50 knots, closing in. Oh, actually 38 knots. Fast.
That one's pretty much perfectly 000 relative, right?
Yeah.
263 at 3 miles, 55 knots speed.
Okay, so, if you're not used to seeing radar screens, you don't know what's what. You don't know what image is the Omaha itself. Is the Omaha showed on that screen?
So that's the center point of the radar system, right in the smack dab center of that screen. So what's important is that you are seeing the radar array that goes around the Omaha for protection at that level. There's another type of radar that these unidentifieds were being picked up on, and that's a SPF 77, which is an air-based radar, a higher altitude. Why I wanted to release this radar footage with you is because it really shows that these are points, that these are actual vehicles, that it's being picked up by this radar, and this radar is specially designed. This specific radar is specially designed to kind of cut through mist and bad weather. It's a really good radar for that. So you are seeing these targets being acquired and being held by this X and X band system, which is just like the frequencies. You also see objects dropping off this radar. I want to really explain that. So there's a scan volume for this radar. This is used for, like, if something's coming in at a trajectory that's coming around you, this is what's able to reach out, pick them, point them, and target them. So that's the tolerance of this radar. When they drop off, when you'll see 2 of them drop off or more in this footage, they're either going above the scan volume or they're going below the scan volume, which would support the idea that these things were moving in an interesting way. I mean, what goes up, what goes down? So maybe, like we saw in the USS Omaha, the UAPTF believes that object likely went into the water. They actually searched for wreckage with a submarine. That was in a classified report. It was conveyed to me. It's just how it is. It was conveyed to me. So it is possible that at one time there were 14 targets on the screen, but it's possible there were way more, because there was at least 14, because what happens is as these things go up or down, they'll lose track on them because they're outside of the tolerance of the radar, if that makes sense.
So the ones that disappear from the screen, they either went up really fast or went down into the water. Is that right?
Yeah, it is fair to say that it went above the scan volume of the radar or below, which would be into the water.
Talk about speed. I heard a couple of pieces of that audio. The one that says track 781 just sped up to 46 knots, 50 knots, closing in. That sounds like it's heading our way.
Yes.
And then it says 138 knots. Holy crap. 138 knots. Moved along a pretty good clip, and then it turned around. So it's not a balloon blowing in the air, is it?
Oh, no. That's a ridiculous statement by uninformed debunkers who try to manipulate the data. And maybe they didn't know I was going to have this corroborative data. Look, you got to be suspicious of anybody that knows more than everybody else within a few minutes, right? So that's what we're seeing with people like that. And there's so many of them. There's so many of them, all these internet experts. So this is kind of a death nail for them. So whatever, let's let the world decide. But, 138 knots, that's over 158 miles an hour. So that is why you hear the person say, oh shit, because, this thing it's moving fast for any kind of, I guess you'd call it like a drone. But remember, these are significant in size. In order to be picked up on this radar, there is a tolerance for that. And I'm still trying to define that. It was reported that the guesstimate is 6 feet in diameter, solid mass. So that's at least 6 feet spherical. There will be debate about that. I'm looking into that. I'm talking with people that deal with this particular radar system. It's Northrop Grumman who created it, Sperry Marine. And, I'm going through all the literature and calling people in every country, about 7 countries now I've called to find out about the tolerances, but also just the other forms of visual intelligence, which I think the world will see in the months to come. These objects were described as being, approximately 6 feet in diameter. And it's because of the light source. There wasn't like rotors, there wasn't sound as if it's a drone or something. That was just the easy explanation. But these things are sizable. And more importantly, they couldn't determine where they landed or came from. And this is a problem. Some individuals I spoke with feel that they failed in their duties by not investigating deeper, in the moment. But there wasn't a sense of threat. There was a sense of wonder, like what is going on here? It was described to me, there's a triangle of kinetic action, which is, taking kinetic action against other intrusions. And we do have capabilities. And I know in some instances, the drone takedown capabilities were ineffective.
That's what I was going to ask, is whether or not, when people see that video of the sphere outside the USS Omaha, why didn't they shoot it down? Why didn't they use anti-drone capabilities? You've been told they tried.
Well, let me back up. Not in that incident. There's others that I'm going to be reporting on with you that you know about. And in those cases, I can firmly say that there were anti-drone capabilities that were deployed and ineffective. However, that's for this one, this triangle of kinetic action, aggressive action, there are 3 sides to that, and it wasn't met, and that's the problem, right? Like you're having all these incursions, you're having all this stuff go on, but in order to kind of properly deal with this situation, you need to have a sort of capability, opportunity, and intent are the 3 sides to this. We didn't know at that time their capabilities. We didn't know the intent, and really the opportunity was even vague because we didn't know the capabilities. So because these 3 sides to the triangle of kinetic action weren't taken, there was no aggressive action on our end taken. There was visual intelligence and observation. I mean, if they had come in differently and aggressively, then something would have been done. But really, it was just kind of awe and wonder, what is this? Where are they coming from?
Like we all would if we saw this, if we
Yeah.
had a chance to see it. There's a part of the transcript where the sailors say in the CIC, they say, that one's pretty much perfectly 000 relative, right? Do you know what that means?
Yeah, I believe that's straight ahead from the ship. I need to look, I might be wrong. Don't crucify me. Everybody wants me to be wrong on something. I believe that's talking about like the azimuth, the orientation, 000 relative probably means just straight ahead.
One comment I've seen a lot of from people who don't want this to be true is, gosh, it's grainy video. How did those sailors get away with shooting this on their cell phones? It's not shot on cell phones, is it?
No.
And the people who were recording images off of the thermal screen were there with permission to do this, right?
Oh, they were tasked to be there. So that's look, there are teams called Snoopy teams, which some people have heard about, but they're really not an actionable intelligence team. They film mainly the ship itself. This is kind of the new version of that, because a lot of information is coming out. They're called Viper teams, and they're meant to get ahead of the narrative. They're meant to record and film any anomalous or dangerous events. Like, this is their mandate: anomalous or dangerous events, and then to be aware of how it might be portrayed in the media. So there is a sense with the Viper team, which is just visual intelligence personnel, is Viper. That's what it means. They got a cool logo. Their idea is to be able to, be ahead of the narrative. And I think that's what everybody's trying to do with UFOs right now. These are unidentified. We don't know what they are. Everybody tries to corner me in saying they're aliens or something like this. I have no idea. I just know that it is from a mid-air collision standpoint, it's important to know. And this was such a dramatic event. I mean, and just to kind of illustrate that, I'm going to be painting the whole picture with you. We're going to be explaining it, but we're talking about up to 100 targets at one time out in this area, swarming 9 different warships, all with a very similar thing going on, where there is one stationary above each vessel, and then others swarming around, kind of playing with like massive lights on. So it was said to me, one of the most impressive aspects, it's said to me by numerous people on numerous ships who are in the position where they should be fighting the ships, dealing with all of this. There's a lot of people involved in this process. It's not like I've got a source. This is, as you know, George, it's over time, numerous people. So when these people come forward, they're like, well, we were all experiencing a similar thing. And you could hear on the comms, you could hear everybody dealing with this at the same time. And by the way, we're talking about 2 major waves over 3 days for the first one, I think 14th, 15th, and 16th, or something like right in there. The 15th was kind of the coup de grace. And then also later in the month, in the same area, other ships. So man, this is a big event series with up to 100 contacts at one time swarming our Navy warships.
Ryan Graves, who was one of the naval aviators who was featured on that 60 Minutes piece, he's now sort of out and talking about these things on social media. He said he was there, one of the naval aviators present for the gimbal incident, this incredible display that was seen by Navy pilots. And he says that something that should be self-evident, that in essence, the Navy has far more data from sensors than has been made public. We've all seen the FLIR images of the gimbal and what it does, and we've heard the audio of the naval aviators saying there's a whole fleet of them, but we've never seen a definitive sensor data to prove that. He has told us in the last couple of days and told the world that data does exist. The sensor data has never been made public. The Navy has it. And some of these self-appointed experts on Twitter who've just decided our Navy must be stupid. They can't even recognize an F-18 and the exhaust from it. Well, the Navy isn't stupid. They're not stupid. Those aviators find those planes are really smart. They have the best sensors in the world. The ships have the best sensors in the world, and they know what they saw. They know what evidence exists that the public has yet to see. UAP task force has it. Same is true with this.
Right. This is so important. This is critical. So, for example, you have Commander Fravor, who visually saw the craft with a bunch of other pilots, like Alex just came out, right, and talked about it. So she was talking about the same thing. But also understand these things with the Tic Tac incident. You and I have reported this before, George. They were coming in. I don't know if we said this. I think we said this. They were coming into ICBM trajectories, intercontinental ballistic missile trajectories, from 80,000 feet or above that scan volume of the Spy 1 radar down to sea level in less than a second and a half. This raised a lot of alerts on many electro-optic systems that are not yet public. Now, the question is, how do you obtain and release this? Well, apparently you and I have a method, because this is the first time that the world is ever seeing electro-optics additional data that is corroborative to this base narrative of swarmings of UFOs with FLIR footage from the Omaha that corresponds to that data. So what you're seeing is radar footage from the USS Omaha right in that 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. on July 15th, when there was a sort of height of this activity before that one we see later dropped into the water. So this is important that we clarify for everybody that yes, there are other electro-optic systems. Now, how do you obtain those? How do you get them out to the public? What do you do? Printouts, or do you film the screen like the information that we're providing? You know, look, the most impressive aspect said to me by numerous people that were involved was the endurance of these vehicles. It's not like they went like, you know, the Tic Tac, where it was almost faster than the speed of sound. It's not like that. These things had full lights on. They were brazen. They were all around numerous warships. As I said, 9 of them during that time period. First swarm over a few days, second swarm later in the month. But the endurance of them, where did they take off from? Where did they land? Why doesn't our intelligence agencies know who these are, where they're coming from? There's so many big questions, but the endurance of them, one individual said to me, it's world changing no matter what. Because just the endurance alone was something that was significant and talked about.
Well, I'm expecting, I don't know if you've checked your mail yet, but I'm expecting my paycheck from the secret government cabal who's been leaking this stuff to us sometime today. What about you?
Okay, so let's talk about that. This is important. This is important for truth and honesty and openness. You know, look, I appreciate the way people's minds work. However, you have to understand, this is not something that like you and I obtained all of this information last week. I mean, you admitted that you had the FA-18 photos of the 3 objects that made its way up to a secured briefing about the UAPTF. You had those for years. You and I have had large amounts of data and people that have come forward to us. It's not one person. It's not 2 people. It's not 3 people. It's not 4 people. It's not anybody within the UAPTF leaking information out so that they can create a false narrative. That's so just absolutely ridiculous. And it's also not just one type of sensor data. And we're proving that today. But it's just important that people understand this is gumshoe investigative journalism and reporting. And if you can't wrap your head around that, I can't help you. So I just want to be very clear. That's what this is. Deal with it.
All right. Well, we're putting it out, and the world can debate it again, and the debunkers can do their thing, but they're going to have a hard time dealing with this one, I think. A hard time dealing with it, at least if they're honest. They're going to have a hard time.
Yeah, there's a few more things I want to go over. I want to make sure, you know, our aim, George, is to, you know, provide data and information for the wolves to dissect and to FOIA. I mean, I encourage everybody. I have no idea if the Pentagon is going to say the next day or in 1 hour and 1 minute, all of a sudden they're like, oh yeah, what Jeremy put out is real. George and Jeremy putting it out, it's real. I have no idea. You know, I suspect it will be difficult for them to deny this footage, and I suspect we'll have a similar response. I think they want to get ahead of it with the UFOs. So I suspect this information is going to be verified quickly, or I hope it will. But by the time that this podcast drops, hopefully a couple people are already filing and trying to get information from whoever they need to. I guess the other thing I want to say that people don't know is that I guess I've said it, that like there was numerous warships that are having similar it appears to be coordinated interaction. And this whole series was within this kind of, I'd say, circumference of 100 miles, and there was up to 50 to 100 contacts. So we're going to be learning more about it, but I don't want to get ahead of ourselves. What we are providing today, if people look at this radar screen from the CIC, from the Omaha, and I can actually read the date and the time, so it's in there if people look hard, and also I can see the GPS coordinates, so it's very clear it's true. And then I'm sure the Pentagon will confirm it. How can they not at this point? We're not giving them many options, right? So that's kind of where we're at. That this information is unique. It's never been provided before. Nothing like this has ever been provided before. I was racking my brain. It was John Callahan, where the CIA told him this meeting never happened. We're never talk about this. That whole thing he said at the citizen hearing. That's the closest thing I know to radar data, but you couldn't really see it. You couldn't really visualize. It was like a lot of like data, audio recordings, and printouts. This is the best way to put this data out. It's visual. Everybody can now engage this data and sharpen their knives, as you say, and dig in. I encourage people to work hard, because most people, they just repeat, regurgitate, or they go against something without having new or interesting information. So this is what we're providing is 43 seconds of just never before seen, unique electro-optics data, which everybody's been belly aching for, to corroborate a UFO event that is now historic. And that's part of the USS Omaha on July 15th between 9 and 11 p.m. But also, it's the other warships in that operating area at the same time. So as long as people understand what they're getting, I think that they're going to have a lot to talk about, a lot to dissect. And after a short break, you and I might be releasing more.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Thank you, George.